goals continue to prove hard to come by, and the losses are still piling up. That is the current state of Inter Miami. Hello everybody and welcome to the latest episode of Miami Total Football Radio, aka Miami Total Football Radio. I am Franco Panizo, half of your co-hosting team of this lovely podcast, the number one podcast that covers Inter Miami. And joining me, as always, is El Primo, Steve Brenner. Steve, how are you doing? I know you're excited for England. Unfortunately, Peru went out at the Copa America. There's still a third place game to be played, but their run at the title is over. England is still alive and running, so I imagine you are still very excited and probably on pins and needles.
Yes, excited, but nervous. It's going to be, England haven't got to a final. I'm pretty much repeating this as I do about the class of 92 and wonderful what else Ryan Shawcross is that England have not actually got to a final since 1966, and that is their only final in a major tournament. So not in my lifetime has this happened. So it always tends to end in tears, but we never actually get to the final. I think if we get to the final, then I think that could be deemed a success, but we shall wait and see.
Denmark will be an interesting test. Denmark will be a good test. I think it'll be a good game. The last game, England just steamrolled. Yeah,
Ukraine. It was just no drama. A couple of goals, a goal so early on, I could sit back, enjoy my beer. It was very sort of un-England-like in major finals. They just absolutely killed them. But anyway, when people were listening to this, the game would already have been finished and done, and the verdicts will be sealed. So hopefully,
people will be celebrating for you, or people will be cheering your frustration and sadness, because obviously there's some people that have left comments saying that they don't want England to do well. But
we should find out who they are. Well, you know who they are.
Oh, so, you know, their faces are there. But let's talk about Inter Miami, because that's what this podcast is about. Of course, we do touch on other aspects of football at times, but let's focus in on Inter Miami because they played a game this weekend.
We have to,
given their string of results, we have to dissect another defeat, a 1-0 loss to CF Montreal. We don't have any game to preview, so we'll skip that part. This will be a shorter pod this week. We'll come back next week and preview the game ahead. But Steve, we have a good bit to talk about because we saw some more alarming trends, concerning trends from Inter Miami and yet another defeat. So plenty to dissect and chew on. So Steve, let's get to it. All right, Steve. So Inter Miami, like I just mentioned, lost yet again. Fifth straight defeat for Inter Miami. This was a 1-0 road loss away to CF Montreal. This game was played at Red Bull Arena in Harrison, New Jersey, a venue we are familiar with from our days in the Northeast. But Inter Miami went up there because this game was moved out of Drive Pink Stadium due to the Gold Cup preliminary matches. It was scheduled to be an away game anyway, so I don't think that they were going to open the doors at Drive Pink Stadium to the fans. Regardless, it was moved to Red Bull Arena. There were no fans in the stands. And CF Montreal came out on top with a 1-0 win. Goal comes in the 41st minute from Matthew Chonier. And Inter Miami never really musters up much in the final third to offer a response. Gonzalo Higuain did have a look late off of a free kick that was quickly taken, but that was pretty much it for Inter Miami in terms of trying to get back into the game. Let's quickly go over the lineup, and then we'll discuss our takeaways. Inter Miami came out in its regular 4-2-3-1 formation, and that was with John McCarthy in goal, Kelvin Leardam at right back, Nicolas Figal at right center back, Leandro Gonzalez Pires at left center back. I'm dubbing that the Argentine wall. I like what I've seen from them in that center back position. But left back was Christian McCoon. That first line of the midfield was Gregory as the 6, Blaise Matuidi as the 8, Lewis Morgan on the right side of the second line of the midfield, Jay Chapman at the 10, Breck Shea on the left, and up top was Julian Carranza. Gonzalo Higuain and Rodolfo Pizarro were both on the bench. They came into the game during the second half, so we got to see a bit of them, mixed showings from both of them, but we'll touch on that in a little bit. Steve, what was your main takeaway from this match? Yet another defeat, and yet another one via shutout.
Yeah, just more of the same, isn't it? It's just it was like we're watching the game on repeat, the same old problems that we've been talking about. Unfortunately, for a few weeks, they can't create enough chances, they can't score, and then they're kind of not as solid as the back as we hope they would be. I still think the defence can be remedied. I think they have the numbers there where eventually they could they could sort of shut up shop a bit more and be better. But it's just the most worrying aspect is the fact of the lack of goals, lack of sort of creativity. Lewis Morgan's gone really quiet. We know about the problems with, the DPs. That hasn't worked. Carranza, what a great chance he's had in the last few weeks to really stake his claim, especially, with Higuain dropped. Was his chance to shine. Just hasn't, he hasn't taken it. So it's kind of, sort of depressing, disappointing, wasn't it, that they just hadn't seemed to have learned too much from what had gone on the last few weeks, and it's just more of the same, back to the drawing board, same old problems.
Yeah, it's a tough place to be in. I think we've said that definitely last week. Tough place for Phil Neville to be in, because he's obviously stressing, trying to be compact and tough to play against, but in doing so, he's taken out, or he hasn't had two DPs available from the start, or has chosen not to play them from the start, and because of that, they've lost quality. Now, how much quality did they have even when they were in the lineup, when they were getting beat 3-0 by CF Montreal? I mean, we've debated that and talked about that, but this team is in a very bad way, and there don't seem to be very many solutions, because they've tried different things, just different formations being thrown out at different times, different players in different places, and it's just not working. It's just not clicking, especially up top, because this was the fourth time in this losing streak of 5 games in which Inter Miami was shut out. Now, I do want to talk about the other side of the ball, the defense, and why the team gave up so many chances in that first half and why they eventually conceded and lost this game. But let's start with the attack, because I think that's a bigger trend that we've seen. Like I just said, 4 out of the last 5 games, they've been held without a goal. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's the 6th time this season that they've been held without a goal. Inter Miami has the worst, statistically speaking, the worst attack in the league right now. Has 9 goals on the year through 11 games. That's terrible. That's awful by any measure. Yes, the DPs haven't always been available, etc., but 9 goals is just awful. Steve, for you, what are the issues in the attack? What do you think is missing? What is Inter Miami not doing well? Or what do they need to do better?
Well, they need someone to score some goals, don't they? I mean, I think he's tried to do something with Higuain. It didn't work. Then he dropped him. So that then tried to say, he's saying to Carranza, right, you have a go. Carranza hasn't done it. Higuain is not fit. Lewis Morgan has kind of been off the pace for whatever reason. We don't know really, but he hasn't been the same player as he was. Back last season, he was the goal threat, wasn't he? When this was pre-Higuain. I mean, Pizarro was in his pomp then, if you could call it that, but at least he was playing okay. It just cries out for like a personnel change, doesn't it? Different players to come in, maybe, because I don't know. I mean, they're obviously trying to offload Pizarro. They're going to have to get rid of one other player to balance the books a bit, and then it's a very, very difficult situation. They just don't create enough, and that's been the problem for the last whole time basically the club have been here, right?
I mean, it's been a recurring issue, but you even just said it yourself. Lewis Morgan has regressed. Now, when the whole team is not playing well, right, you could chalk it up to players. But we've seen some of these players perform. We saw them perform last year. How much of that's on Phil Neville? How much do you think he's not getting the most out of the players or not putting them in their best positions to succeed? Because, look, in this game, one takeaway that I had was Lewis Morgan did not play wide that much. He was taking up central positions. Maybe that was a result or a byproduct or a tactic because of Kelvin Leerdam's ability to get forward and make overlapping runs, and maybe he was tasked with providing the width from the right side more so than Lewis Morgan. But Lewis Morgan was taking up spots in the middle, and I don't think that that's his best position or the area where you're going to get the most out of Lewis Morgan. I think what we saw last year, playing the balls into space, letting him run onto them or trying to go at people one-on-one out wide to send in crosses or take shots from those positions, I think that's where he's most effective. And in this one, if you look at the heat map, his heat map, he's tucked in a little more central pockets or central areas a little bit more, which is, again, for me, not the best place to use him. So how much of this lack of scoring do you put on Phil Neville and how he's coaching the team?
He's a big boy. He's the coach. He knows the buck lies with him. I mean, he's 10 games in, so I guess it's early. It's still early in his sort of tenure, so to speak. But I'm sure he understands exactly that. He has to try and work it out. That's the job, and that's what makes these jobs in MLS, even tougher than potentially managing elsewhere in the world, because you can't freely, bring in players and make some changes if you need to, because of everything, the rules of MLS. So it's a difficult one, yeah. But he probably knows that they have to start picking up results. Otherwise, if they don't finish at least in the playoffs, then they're going to have some serious questions are going to be asked.
See, that wasn't the question I had for you. I asked you how much you put on Phil Neville for this, because
he's the coach. Yeah, I mean, he's the coach. I mean, I don't know. I do think he was handed.
But this team is doing worse than it was doing last year. This team has DPs from the start. This team, you could say whatever their individual situations are now. This team has DPs, 3 DPs. This team has players that on paper should be doing a lot better than they are. Last year they finished in 10th place, made the playoffs because of the expanded playoff field, but they finished in 10th place. This team right now, Inter Miami, is the second worst team in the league, and they're only above Toronto FC, who just fired their coach after 11 games. So I think this team is, it's not a team. I don't see players that like fight for the coach, or there are those cliches, but I don't see a team that's playing for Phil Neville or badly. I don't see it. I don't see that from this group of players. They've had their moments,
haven't they? I mean, they have the last few weeks have not been great at all, and that's when they've been going downhill rapidly. But they had some moments early on when we were like, wow, this is going to be good. There's passion there and all this sort of stuff, and then they started doing terribly. He's like, we're not so sure now. He knows it's the buck and rest was him. That's the job, isn't it? That's why they appointed him, and there's no, he's the guy in charge, so it does rely on him. But, the squad, he just hasn't got a good squad to deal with, has he? So he has to use his coaching acumen, of which is, he's, developed over the last few years, to try and get himself out of the hole.
This squad should not be 13th place in the Eastern Conference. I don't care.
Not a good squad, though, is it? It's not it's not a brilliant squad, is it? They haven't got many options there.
I mean, it didn't stop Jorge Mas from saying when we went to the jersey unveiling that he expected, or the goal was to finish top 3 in the Eastern Conference. They're bottom 3 in the Eastern Conference. They're complete opposite of where they thought they could be, or what they were stating publicly. So I mean, again, I don't think this is a great team. I think it's a flawed team. Very imbalanced team, but it shouldn't be 13th place in the Eastern Conference.
How does someone like Orlando, their recruitment? I know they've been around longer, but their recruitment over the last couple of years compared to Miami's is sort of night and day, isn't it?
Sure, but Miami has the highest payroll in the league, so they're investing.
They're investing, but they're investing unfortunately in the wrong players, which is
again, but this team should not be 13th place. Should not be in 13th place. And that to me is not only a reflection of players not performing. I think that also speaks to the job Phil Neville is doing and needs to improve upon. Because I think he even said it himself. That when they come back from this 2-week break, there's going to be a lot of games in a short span. And I think he said the next 4 to 5 games will really determine whether Inter Miami has a shot at making the playoffs. That's what his words were.
Big games.
Yes, and I wanted to touch on the attack a little bit more, because I think the team in general lacks profundity and depth. Now, when I say depth, I don't mean options on the bench. I mean attacking depth, ability to penetrate that final third, get in there and make things happen. Because if you look at the stats, obviously they've been shut out, right? We know that. But if you look at the stats of the last 5 games, Inter Miami has finished with 3 shots on target versus CF Montreal, 3 shots on target in the 2-1 loss to Orlando City, 1 shot on target in the 1-0 loss to DC United, 3 shots on target in the 3-0 loss to DC United before that, and 1 shot on target in a 1-0 loss versus the Chicago Fire. Those numbers clearly state and show on their own that Inter Miami does not create enough. I think a problem has been Rodolfo Pizarro has not played much in this stretch because of an injury, and I think him getting back in there, even with his over dribbling and his poor decision making at times, and as frustrating as he can be to watch or to probably play with if you're his teammates at times, they need him in there because they need more creativity. They're just not getting enough.
I think they need to sell him, really, don't they? That's what they're going to do.
I mean, that's
yeah.
But that also, that's going to come down to negotiations. Right now, he's on the roster, and right now they don't have somebody else. They need him to play, and they need him to perform. And look, I think he's going to play, just like I think Gonzalo Higuain is going to play in 2 weeks. Because let's listen to this quote from Phil Neville after this loss to CF Montreal, and hear what he had to say, because it sounds like they're coming back into the lineup during this next stretch.
And those players that now have been brought to the club to produce moments of magic, to produce match-winning performances, to produce match-winning crosses, the players that we expect to do that now have to deliver. And that's what the demand will be on. It's unacceptable. We have to now deliver. And that's not a threat. That is just reality of where we are at this moment in time. We are losing too many games, and we now need to stand up, every single one of us, myself included, myself more than anyone, to make sure that we're all absolutely better. And I think that's why I took the job. I took the job because it was a massive challenge, and we're going to make sure, we've said in the dressing room at the end, we won't fail. This football club has to succeed, and we will, and I'm convinced of that.
Steve, listening to that, it sounds like Gonzalo Higuain and Rodolfo Pizarro. To me, that's my read on it. They're coming back in. They're going to come back into the lineup, and that they're going to have to perform, just as designated players need to perform in this league. That could take away, though, from some of the attitude and fight and hard to play against qualities that Inter Miami has adopted over these last few weeks, because Gonzalo Higuain, he's on a fitness program, he's not going to give you the type of running and fighting and hold-up play that Julian Carranza does. And I think you even saw that in this game when he came on in the second half. Gonzalo Higuain, although he wasn't playing up top, he was playing as kind of an attacking midfielder, joint number 10 in a WM formation, the 3-2-2-3. He was taking up deeper spots, trying to play make or create. If he's going back into the lineup, I imagine it's with him going to be up top. And I don't know. I don't know if that's going to help the team. It could help the team in the attack, but it might hurt them on the defensive side. So, what do you think? Do you think they should come back in? Is that the next move Phil Neville has to make? Because right now it's not working with what he's done.
No, it depends on fitness, I guess, for Higuain, doesn't it? And also, Pizarro said he was injured. There was suggestions said that he wasn't as injured as he thought. So, they're good. I think they're good options for him to have off the bench if they're going to be building to have Higuain back, but not to have Pizarro in the team moving forward. Then I guess this gives an opportunity to try and blood in new players. He does like Jay Chapman, and try and a different system where Pizarro, doesn't really fit into it. So they're good options to have off the bench. Potentially there could be some transfer movement between Pizarro and some clubs in Mexico within the next month, so I'm told. So. And then, Higuain's working on his fitness, but he's not at the level yet which they want him to be at. So that's an ongoing issue. And then, how happy is Higuain? He's been dropped in the first place. So he has problems with those two players in particular. And that's not great when they're your two best players. And then Matuidi's flickering into life and showing some good performances. But I guess that's one sort of crumb of comfort, but hasn't been fantastic at all, has he? So, and that's a rare, decent performance from him. So, but he kind of knows that Phil Neville knows that he can do it, but has he still got the legs? So he has problems with all three DPs, which is affecting the team.
So, but would you put them back in the lineup? Do you expect that to be the move he does when they return and they play the New York Red Bulls?
I don't think so. I don't think with Pizarro. I think if Higuain's fit, he plays. Of course, if he's fit enough, he plays. So let's see how Higuain's fitness is improving the next 2 weeks. If he's working hard enough to get back in, the proof will be in the team sheet.
So you think Higuain likely to come back, Pizarro into the lineup, Pizarro now?
Yes. No. Yes. Rodolfo on the bench.
If you put, all right, so I'll ask you this and then we'll change the subject. If Higuain comes in, are you putting him up top at the 9 or are you putting him at the 10? Because my question to you would be, based on what you're saying, is where does the creativity come from then? Because you can put Gonzalo Higuain at the 9, but if the ball's not getting to him, because the team has issues getting into that final third and penetrating that final third. You look at the heat map, actually, if you guys want to go and look at it. I posted it on Miami Total Football's Instagram account. Against Orlando City, the game where they were up 1-0, a great goal from Gonzalo Higuain from distance, from far out. Again, it's not plays that are being constructed and finished off or created in the final third. And if that whole heat map, it's all dark except for the final third. Like, there's almost nothing in the final third except for the right flank, which is where Lewis Morgan and Kelvin Leerdam attacked. But the final third is by and large just empty space. Inter Miami does not get there. So if you start Gonzalo Higuain, Steve Brenner, where would you put him? Is he a 10 or is he going up top at the 9?
Well, he is a 9, isn't he? I mean, I don't know if he and then we do see him dropping deeper. I mean, strikers in the past it's sometimes natural for them just to play a bit deeper. Think of, Wayne Rooney did that when he just would go deeper and deeper. In the end, he wouldn't be a striker at all. He'd be like a sort of a number 10, roaming around. But Higuain's the best player on the team, so they have to try and find a way to utilize his skills the best. Obviously, he's got to be fit. We just mentioned that, but if he's able to play in that role, I mean, it depends. I prefer him up top really, and then just trying to get the balls into him. But they can't get the balls into him, so then he invariably does drop back. So that's the problem.
Well, yeah, which is why I think they're both coming back in, especially when Phil says those players that have been brought to the club to produce moments of magic. He says those players, so it's more than one.
Well, he wants them to give him, to take a few headaches
away
from
him.
But
I think they're both coming in. I think they're both coming back into the lineup. I think he's going to give them another opportunity. That's just what I think. We'll see in a week and a half.
If they perform well over the last sort of 2 months, then he wouldn't be in this position in the first place, would he? So you can
but the players But the players he's putting in now aren't working either, right? So he needs to revert back to them, give them a chance, see what they can do, because what's happening now on the field is not working either, and they're losing and getting shut out. One thing that I think could help Inter Miami is improving their set pieces, because this season they have one goal on a set piece. That was the free kick back in week 2. Federico Higuain crossed it to Gonzalo Higuain for that headed goal against the Philadelphia Union. But besides that, they haven't scored off of set pieces this year, penalty kicks aside. No goals from corner kicks. That's a trend that we talked about last year, and that has continued into this year. The weirder part, or the more confusing part, is that Inter Miami, on its technical staff, Phil Neville has a designated set piece specialist. His name is Mark Mason. He's also the goalkeeping coach, or the director of goalkeeping, excuse me. Why is Inter Miami not scoring off set pieces? Why do you think it is? What's going on there? Because if you're 11 games into the season and you just have one goal off of a free kick, none off of corner kicks, that's clearly an issue. Especially, that's something that could help this team create goals, create chances, open games up for you. Why do you think they're not scoring goals from corner kicks?
No idea. I mean, I guess, like I said, Lewis Morgan, he was good on assists last week. His free kicks last season were good. I haven't analysed his free kicks productivity like you have, but I mean, clearly it hasn't been as good. Gonzalez Perez is strong in the air. Figal is pretty strong in the air. But then I guess Higuain maybe, but then Matuidi, they're not a big team, are they, in terms of physicality really? Gregory's not. They've
got Gonzalez Pires, Figal, Ryan Shawcross played for a few games. Breck Shea's not a small guy, so they have enough weapons in there where they should be doing better. Now, when we talked about this last year, it was something I went into in-depth analysis on. Went through most of the games. I remember putting out a video on YouTube and saying, "Hey, Diego Alonso, I respond to your task that you gave me in a press conference by saying, look at all the set pieces we've done, and we've done a good job by and large. We've just been unlucky." One of the biggest takeaways I had was Leandro Gonzalez Pires is the only consistent threat with the type of conviction, the type of timing, the type of aggressiveness needed to win those aerial balls, those 50-50s in the box. And he's again, from my eyes, and I haven't done an in-depth analysis this season, but from what I remember, from what I've watched, what I've viewed, he's still the only one that does so. Ryan Shawcross does not get on the end of things and come close to scoring. Neither does Nicolas Figal. Neither does Breck Shea. I don't know if Lewis Morgan's delivery hasn't been good. It might be time to maybe switch it up and give somebody else a shot. But clearly, whatever they're doing is not working, and that's also hurting their ability to score goals and win games. Because you can play ugly and be down 1-0, or a game can be 0-0, and if you can get a set piece, that opens up the game for you, that opens up the opponent now has to come out and play a little bit more, that opens in spaces behind, that you can hit on the counter, you can score. Not scoring on set pieces is, I'm not saying it's the only reason this attack is as poor as it is, but it is a big contributing factor, and they need to figure that out, because they have a set piece specialist on the staff. And we've seen different wrinkles in recent weeks. I think Phil Neville and the staff have kind of realized, look, it's not working what we're doing. Let's try to come up with different ideas. We've seen them go, have the fullbacks go up into advanced positions and receive low passes off corner kicks to whip in crosses from deep to try to catch the defense by surprise. Hasn't really worked out. I've actually been kind of surprised by that decision because Inter Miami hasn't executed it very well. We've seen a lot of long throw-ins now from the fullbacks when Inter Miami gets into the final third, just to kind of create havoc in the box, see if a ball falls to them. But again, it's just by and large not working. In this game against CF Montreal, they had a free kick from the right. Lewis Morgan looked like he was going to cross it in, and he tried to take a shot to the near post on the ground to surprise the keeper, and it didn't work. The keeper made a good save, or an easy save, routine save, and that was one of Inter Miami's 3 shots on target. So they need to improve in that facet of play because that is definitely hindering them.
Yeah, it just it's symptomatic of the team just not playing well, not functioning well on all different levels. So it's something they really have to sort out.
So last thing I'll touch on here, because it's not about this game, it's looking ahead, and this is breaking news here that will be coming out on SBIsoccer.com shortly, but by the time you're listening to this, the story will already be out. Inter Miami will have another attacking option. Sources have told me that Inter Miami is signing Indiana Vasilev from Aston Villa. Not sure if it's a loan deal or an outright signing, but he's a forward/midfielder who has previous youth U.S. men's national team experience. He was on the 2019 under-20 U.S. men's national team. He hasn't played a whole lot at Villa since signing with them. He's gone on loan spells to Burton Albion and Cheltenham Town. So clearly a young player. He's 20 years old, looking to find his way in the professional settings. Probably needs a change of environment. Inter Miami will be that place for him. How much we can expect from him, I'm not sure. I'm not that familiar with him from a performance standpoint, but it's another option Phil Neville will have for the rest of the season. So, Steve, let's leave it there. We have our Q&A session to get to, and I know you're getting ready to put on your England hat and probably drink a few pints. So we'll take a quick break, and we'll come back with our Q&A session after this. All right, Primo, it's Q&A time. Let's start because we have quite a few of them. The first one I think is a really good question. It comes from Tweeter. No profile picture, just Tweeter. Which is worse? The 5-game losing streak Inter Miami had under Alonso at the start of last season, or the 5-game losing streak under Neville 1/3 into this season? Also, which player does Inter Miami CF miss the most from last season? My answers are the Neville streak and Ben Sweat. Steve, which 5-game losing streak is worse?
In terms of beauty or in terms of the results they suffer? I mean, the Diego Alonso one, remember, that was also in those first games where MLS is back, isn't it? The last two games of that run, 3 games?
The last
were
3.
In the bubble?
Yeah, the first two were the game against LAFC and then DC United.
I'd probably say no, this recent losing streak, just because we thought they kind of turned a corner. They had a rough start, then they won a couple, and then they were looking good, and then it's sort of progressed. So yeah, I'd say this one.
I 100% agree that this one, and I don't even think it's close. I think this one is by far and away the worst losing streak, because last year it was a team that was coming together. They didn't even have 2 designated players on the roster. They only had 1 in Rodolfo Pizarro. And everything was still coming together. There was a pandemic that hit in the middle of that 5-game losing streak, and they were scoring some goals. They scored against DC United. Probably could have won that game if not for Roman Torres' red card. They scored against Orlando City. They scored against the Philadelphia Union. So they had some moments at least. In this one, they're not scoring by and large, and they're playing pretty poor soccer. Not much to hang your head on and say, well, look, there's reasons for optimism. So this one, for me, is absolutely the worst losing streak. Which player does Inter Miami miss the most from last season? I mean, there's not that many players that are gone.
Lewis Morgan.
I would say, I think he means just players that have departed for other clubs or other areas. I mean, there's not that many. Will Trapp, there's Ben Sweat, there's Andres Reyes, but, I mean, none of them really, I would say, Inter Miami's missing a whole lot right now. Ben Sweat, maybe because of his ability to get forward, although he was a big liability defensively. We'll see what happens when Kieran Gibbs comes in. Maybe he can give them a little more balance in terms of getting into the attack and maybe some better defensive cover as well. So that's the first question. Next question comes from Jose Martinez. This team has no identity. Horrible spacing. Consistently struggles with the high press. No juegan a nada, which means they play zero, like they don't play well. We lost the possession battle each game, and at this point we're forced to celebrate a simple shot on goal. So not a question, I guess more of a comment, and he actually does touch on something that we didn't talk about on the previous segment that I meant to bring up, because something I wrote for SBIsoccer.com after the game when I rewatched it was how poor the spacing was between the lines. If you look at the game again, especially in that first half, Inter Miami gave up a bunch of chances before they ended up conceding in the 41st minute. Now, why that was, one of the reasons was the spacing was awful, terrible. The front six, which is the midfield line and Julian Carranza, they were all in a higher block up the field, and the defensive line was withdrawn in a deeper position in its own half, and there was just this big space in the middle of the field between the lines that allowed CF Montreal to play through. That's one of the reasons how the goal comes to be. They start knocking it around from left to right into that space, and it was just that's inexplicable to me. That is 100% for me on Phil Neville, because the team should be on the same page. They should be moving together on the field. In different moments, can the structure or the posture break because of how plays happen? Sure, but to come out from the first minute to minute 45 with this, I don't know if the message didn't get across or it wasn't clear enough, or I don't know. You could, if it was one player, you could say, all right, that one player just didn't produce. But when it's complete lines of the team that are just not on the same page, that are not in sync, that's a coaching issue. That needs to be corrected, because that shouldn't be happening. That should not be happening at this level with this team. And I think that's pretty head-scratching and mind-boggling that happened. I don't know if you have any thoughts for why that was or why that happened, because this team in the previous two matches had been on the same page by and large. They were tough to create chances against. Orlando City didn't create a whole lot until the end of the game when they win it at DraftKings Stadium. So why do you think that happened here? Why? What's an explanation for that?
Yeah, no. I mean, I guess the players just not taking on what they were asked, or the coaching staff just not noticing it from the sideline because that other stuff was going on. I mean, yeah, you always want. They showed England, the England match against Ukraine, they have got Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips were the two holding midfielders. And every time England went forward, you knew that they were there. Both of them were there, sweeping up everything that came. If anything that came from it in front of them towards them, they'd be able to clean it up. So you need that structure, and that's why they've been so successful. So, yeah, I'm sure that's something they're going to have to look at, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just confusing to me that happens in a game 11 games into the season, because it's not a team that's getting to know each other.
Teams don't play well. They haven't got confidence. They're all a bit all over the place. People don't know what they're doing. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, but normally you want. Listen, you can play poor soccer, but normally the team wants to move together, right? Normally you try to keep your lines as tight as possible when you're in a defensive posture, so that you don't give the opposing team space to play in and play through and make it easy for them to break you down. Whereas here, that to me, that picture, that visual is as alarming as anything I've seen this season, because that 11 games into the season shows a team that's not on the same page. So we'll see if Inter Miami corrects that, because that absolutely cannot continue if this team wants to get anywhere close to sniffing a playoff spot. Next question comes from Lloyd Halebrun. He has two. One's a little more snarky. It says, could they actually score in a brothel? The next one says, so did they actually accomplish anything by benching the DPs? Primo, you can start there.
I mean, yeah, in terms of the DPs, I mean, yes, because he has to get those players right in terms of Higuain getting him right physically, and for Pizarro, I guess they want to move him on so they can free up a spot so they can do something else with that money. So I think he's done everything he can with him, really.
I think it accomplished the message being sent that levels need to be raised. I think it accomplished that. Obviously, the results haven't picked up, but maybe that lights a fire under Gonzalo Higuain, and maybe for Rodolfo Pizarro as well. We'll see, but maybe that, at least the message has been sent that no one is above the team. At least that message is loud and clear. Although, obviously, you would want the results to be better. Next question comes from Big88. And again, this is a family show, so I will not say the curse words in your tweets, but I'll replace them with nicer words. Let's face it, this season is in the crapper. We got 3 DPs, 1 smokes cigarettes, 1 plays for Mexico only, and the other one is just washed up. This team is a joke. I mean, it's definitely not in a good way. Like we've said, the team's not in a good way. I don't see very many reasons for optimism from the outside based on what we've seen. I don't see very much good soccer. Like Jose Martinez said in the previous question, no juegan a nada. Yeah, you don't see a team that combines well. You don't see the little triangles around the field to triangulate and pass through the opposition. Not a lot of 1-2 passes or wall passes, however you label them. It's not a team that doesn't offer very much in the attack. Doesn't offer very much when it has the ball, which is a big concern for me. Steve, you don't think it's going to improve, or you think it can improve?
I think it can. Yeah, it can improve. They just need to. The DP situation is just really hurting them. But we've been talking about that for months. That's always been the problem. So,
next question comes from Sal Paradise. Gonzalo is our only goal threat and best player on the team. Phil needs to find a way to get him the ball in good positions. Why not switch to a 4-4-2 and give him a strike partner to help him out? Carranza, Robinson, or Mitch Curry. Love the pod. Been listening since episode 1.
Like it. 4-4-2. I was ridiculed last season for suggesting such an out-of-date thing. Yeah, 2 up front, Higuain. And yes, I actually was thinking 4. Yeah, Mitch Curry seems to be doing okay. Maybe they could throw him in at some point. A little, different strike option. Him and Higuain together, the dream team could happen. Why not?
I mean, look. We've seen the 4-4-2 defensively from this team. I don't think we'll see the 4-4-2 in terms of the attacking posture because, again, you don't have the wingers. You have one in Luis Morgan, although his performances, his level of performances have dropped. You don't have the wingers on both sides of the ball that can create for those 2 strikers up top. You need to have an ability to create if you're going to put two forwards up top. And as we've seen, this team can't do that. So I can't imagine they go with 2 strikers. Because that puts more of an emphasis on the midfield line to create, and with 5, they're not even able to create. So I don't think we'll see that, at least from an attacking posture, from an attacking structure. Next question comes from Elder Bar. Can Mas buy Beckham's portion of the club and sack him and his crew out of the club? Also, can Gregory and Makun play together with Pizarro and Gonzalo in front of them and Carranza as the 9? Your thoughts? So more tactical, formational questions. People looking for answers from a formation standpoint because everything we've seen as of late, like we keep reiterating, is not good enough. So could this work with Gregory and Makun in the middle and Pizarro and Gonzalo as joint number 10s? I haven't seen a whole lot from Christian Makun. I'm going to be honest. I haven't seen a whole lot from him in terms of with the ball at his feet. Now, he's put in some respectable, serviceable performances at left back in terms of doing the defensive job, but I haven't seen enough from him with the ball to say put him into the center of the field where you're going to get a lot of touches inevitably because that's just where the ball ends up a lot of the time. So I don't know if that look would work. Not opposed to the idea of Gonzalo and Pizarro as joint number 10s with Carranza in front of them, but that probably takes away a good bit of the defensive side of the team and the effort and fight and ability to press and whatnot.
Yeah, look, imagine if there was a time when Pizarro and Higuain were at the peak of their powers and they were both of them absolutely on fire and teaming up, and Pizarro feeding Higuain time and time. That's what would make the team tick, isn't it? That's why they were paid the big money to come in and sort of change the team dynamic. But because they're doing badly, it now relies on the other guys to come in and bail them out, and the other guys aren't on that level. And it's just, it's just hurt. It just hurts the team so badly.
Let me ask you this, Steve. What would you do? Give me the formation. I know you touched a little bit on Gonzalo Higuain coming back in, but not Pizarro. But what would your lineup be? Like if you had to win a game tomorrow with the team that you have right now, what would your lineup be?
I mean, I guess I'd keep maybe Higuain on the bench. I don't know. It's so difficult because of the lack of options, I guess. Maybe I don't know. Go back and exactly what I said before and throw them both in and just give them one last chance to see if it works. I don't know.
Okay.
You know,
Well, they're
difficult.
losing an option. They're losing Kelvin Leerdam, who I liked what I've seen from him by and large at right back since he's gotten back into the lineup. They're losing him because he's going with Suriname for the Gold Cup, so he'll be out for probably the next game, if not more than that. Kieran Gibbs and Nick Marsman are expected to arrive very soon. Phil Neville said that he expects them both to be available for the next game against the New York Red Bulls on July 17th.
I don't think Kieran Gibbs is going to be available for that one. But the keeper is.
Oh, you don't think so? Okay, because Phil Neville on the weekend said he expected them to be available. He expected Robbie Robinson to be healthy and back for that one as well. But you don't think Kieran Gibbs? Have you heard something on that end, or it's just a gut feeling there?
I think he expected him to be, but he's not going to be. Gibbs won't be in the squad for the next game.
That's tough for them then. Tough for them because they need all the help they can get. Last question. It comes from Dos Knows. Big fan of the podcast. What happened to Felipe Valencia? Haven't seen him play for Fort Lauderdale CF. Also, when is Gibbs coming in? And can he play maybe the left wing position? See, so we kind of jumped the gun there because we have a question about Kieran Gibbs. As far as Felipe Valencia, I had heard he had suffered an injury earlier in the year, and that limited him or that prevented him from participating. But why he's still not playing now, I'm not sure. I will definitely look into that because it is a bit curious that he's not getting much playing time with Fort Lauderdale. As for Gibbs, I don't think he's going to play that left wing position. I don't think so. I think he's a left back. He'll provide some of those marauding runs, those overlapping runs from the back. But again, he's a defensive-minded player, or a player with defensive qualities. Those are his strengths, not necessarily getting into the attack and creating things on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's correct.
I love it. Primo's one-liners. Okay, Steve.
I agree with everything you've just said. Yeah. You're right. You're not wrong.
England will lose the semifinal. Do you agree with that? No, I'm just kidding. So, Steve, that does it for the Q&A session for this week. Give us your final thoughts. I'll give mine, and we'll wrap up the show after that.
Yeah, I definitely think that when the loss last weekend was just disappointing, just because it was like a complete rerun from everything we've seen in the last few weeks. I just think, again, they've got a break now, a couple of weeks to regroup and see if they can go again. And maybe by in the next couple of weeks, some transfer stuff could be sorted out, and they can get the fresh faces in that maybe they need. So a lot of work for Phil Neville to do.
My final thought, and I have two. One's Inter Miami related. One is not. One's for you, Lloyd Halebrun. You had asked about the Palm Beach County lack of local TV deal. I haven't found out why that deal didn't get made from the start, but I've heard that it is in the works, that they're trying to get something done fairly soon for that part of the Tri-County South Florida area. So at least maybe some positive news in that regard. They're working on it. Still trying to figure out why that wasn't there from the jump, though. But my other thought, not Inter Miami related, is that Peru had a heck of a run. It's been awesome to watch them compete and do a deep run at this Copa America. The penalty kick shootout against Paraguay that game was the best game of the tournament. Very wild, very nervy. From a neutral perspective, I'm sure it was a lot of fun just because of all the twists and turns and thrills that happened in that game. So, been fun to watch Peru. Hopefully they win on Friday against Colombia. I know that there's some Colombian listeners on this pod, but obviously I'm of Peruvian descent, so I've got to say, vamos Peru. But that does it for this week's pod. Thank you guys so much again for listening. We'll be back next week to preview the next game against the New York Red Bulls and see if Inter Miami can get out of this funk, out of this losing streak, and can start scoring some goals to give you guys something to cheer about. For Steve Brenner, I am Franco Panizo. We will talk to you guys again